Thank you so much for being here tonight. So we're going to start with a reading from this book, because as you will quickly see, the language and the form of this book is as compelling and as rich as the subject matter, which in itself is already so interesting. So I'm so excited for you to hear Marie's words in her own voice. Marie, I'll let you take it away.
Bonsoir tout le monde. Hello everybody. I'll try to read in English, which is kind of an uncanny experience for me. But also I'd like to start by saying that it's always amazing for me that many times people ask me to read that little part, the loopings. Because I remember that when I wrote the book, this part I'm going to read, the loopings, made me so dizzy when I wrote them, and were so close to a very hallucination, a state of drifting away in my mind, that when I finished the manuscript, I thought I have to cut it. I have to cut it. It's too weird. Nobody will read that. And I even say at some point, please skip those pages, because it's... And my publisher in France, Frédéric Boyer at POL, told me, no, you have to keep it, you have to keep it. And now it's the part that people love to read, apparently. So it's a pleasure to... Sometimes you really don't know what you write, and what you think is good is not that good, and what you think it's, okay, let's throw it away. It's the part people prefer. It's really weird. And it's been more than, I don't know, I've been writing all my life, and I still don't know exactly what the readers are going to read. Caretaker of his own desert, the insomniac does his rounds by keeping watch over himself or herself. Neither asleep or awake, he goes round and round in the dark, a sentinel watching over sleep that never comes, on the outlook for ghosts. He or she is a lotus eater, an aqueduct blaster. Ah oui, it's a translation. It's a song by Alain Bachung. La nuit, je mens, je prends des trains à travers la plaine. Démolisseur d'aqueduc. Aqueduct blaster. It's nicely translated. Insomnia is a folie à deux. That was kept in French. Insomnia is a folie à deux. A severed head looks at me on the pillow, and that head is me. Oh, my insomnia, what plan are you following? Do we need to marshal this huge turmoil of ghosts? I'm writing this at 4 o'clock in the morning. Leap over the ravines, the ravines? Leap over the ravines of these pages. Sleep if you can. Come and find me again after I loop the loop. Loopings. Sleeping means trusting the night, believing in a reunion after the commotion of dreams. But as Anne Dufourmentel told me, she was a friend and a psychoanalyst, you become neurotic when you confuse today with tomorrow. Insomnia is believing that because I'm not sleeping, I will never sleep. Insomnia feeds itself on the fear of not sleeping, the conviction of exhaustion. The nightmare of the day ahead casts a shadow over the night that will end only in the nightmare of the day ahead. All this looping the loop, yes, all this figure-8 roller coasting pitches you downhill to the point of vertigo, of senselessness. Sleepless nights take on the shape of a Mobius strip. The single-sided, single-edged surface continues unendingly, looping back on itself. I dream that my sleeplessness has been destroyed, sings Barbara in 1975. Je rêve que je rêve comme une insomnie. J'ai oublié la suite. And me, I think that I think that I think that I think. Here, 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 a screw rams into my forehead. Right now, right now, right now, a saw slices me into bits of the present. Levinas wrote, we are held to being here, held to be. Vigilance is absolutely empty of all object. Vigilance is as anonymous as the night itself. That was the definition of insomnia by Levinas. No opening where I can escape from myself. I am I, and I would so like to be someone else, someone who sleeps. Relieve me of my consciousness, the appalling consciousness of sleeplessness.
Thank you so much for that reading, Maggie. It's so compelling what you say about this being the passage that people fixate upon that you weren't aware of, because I think for me, I see this passage as the nucleus of the book. It expresses everything else that the book is saying as well, and it does so in such a contained and sort of punchy way. And I think the fact that you weren't aware while you were writing it that this is what the heart of the book will be speaks to what I want the sort of thesis of this conversation to be, which is that there's a relationship between sleep and writing, and it's one that you identify in this book, and that relationship can be kind of pinpointed in the fact that both involve the retreat of the self, or the loss of the self. You step away from what you're doing and something else, automatic, something other to you, sort of emerges. So the fact that this passage, which has become so central to the book, is something that feels other to you, or feels like you couldn't even have known what it would express, is so compelling.
Sleep in itself is a paradox, and writing is a paradox, and that may be the two major points in common they have. I can write. People here may write, but if you write, you are perhaps, you know, that state of light trance when you forget that you are writing and it is writing through you. Ça écrit, like the Nouveau Roman said. Because if you are too aware of the fact that you are writing, you have writer's block. You can't go on. You have to reach a certain state of not being here, of how did you nicely put it? The absence of the self. You have to get rid of yourself. Even if you write autobiography, it has nothing to see with what you are writing, but you must be sitting a bit next to you. You must forget you. That's why also it's very physical. I very often forget to breathe. I write like this. And then I remember to breathe. But when I remember to breathe, I remember that I'm here with a body, with a brain, etc. So I almost lose my sentence. And it's also very close to meditation, to yoga in a way. You have to find a sort of writing breath, or de respiration qui écrit. Sleep is the same for my comrades insomniacs here. We know that when we try to sleep, we don't sleep. When we make an effort to sleep, we don't sleep. It's like dancing. When you make an effort to dance, you don't dance. You are like so. Being able to sleep is letting you go to sleep, forgetting that you are trying to go to sleep. So it's all full of paradoxes. And I don't know if I'm a writer because I'm an insomniac. I don't know. I hope not. There are very good writers who are good sleepers. And there are very good writers who are insomniacs. I quote them a lot. They are my friends. All I can say is that my favorite writers happen to be the insomniacs. Not because they don't sleep, but really because I love what they write. For example, an excellent sleeper was Paul Valéry. Very good French poet, very clever, very, very organized. A bit too conscious for what I like. And he was a very good sleeper. And he woke up every morning at 5, and at 6 he was writing. And at noon he had finished his day. He could have a little nap and then walk, you know. Wow. And he didn't drink too much, and he didn't smoke too much, etc. I admire that. Paul Valéry. But I don't really like what he writes. And Marguerite Duras, who at the end of her life was completely insomniac, and she was dying of alcohol, actually. She used to drink 8 bottles of wine every day. But until the end, she could write. I'm not saying to do that, of course. I just say that I loved what she wrote, even until the end. And Proust, who was not at all a drinker, but it was a terrible insomnia. He died of insomnia combined with asthma and anorexia. And he, as you know, he stayed in his bed for the 7 last years of his life, writing In Search of Lost Time. And I love Proust. I drowned in Proust at some point. I absolutely venerate Kafka. Kafka is just the other name of God. So, and he was such a poor sleeper himself, reaching the point of hallucination very often. He was always in the zone where he saw things that did not exist. And there is I read his diary many times, and il dit à un moment, there's a point where he says, only dreams last night, no sleep. And only the insomniacs can understand what it means, because it seems impossible. Only dreams, no sleep last night. Because yes, we go to sleep. So we are in this zone where we see images and everything loses its logic, and we wake up all the time. We wake up. So there's only dreams. And it's a nightmarish way of not sleeping. So that's why I prefer to to put on the light and read and not get crazy.
And it's so interesting that there's so much to say there that I would love for us to dive into. I'm going to take the opportunity to kind of pick up the last word you just used, which is crazy. The idea that you have to turn the lights on, you start reading to go crazy, because the sort of fundamental thesis of this book is that insomnia is incredibly dangerous on a sort of societal, psychological, spiritual level. There's a point in the book where you write, there are those who are asleep and there are the others. That's all there is to it. But that's not all there is to it, because you are the other who is not sleeping, and you identify the fact that not sleeping is a form of psychological torture, that it is been used in prisons, that it has a sort of historic cultural link to madness. You have this fantastic quote where you say that insomniacs are maniacs in the desert of their boredom. So talk about the danger both of not sleeping, but also the figure of the insomniac as in some way dangerous to literature, dangerous to culture.
I have this intuition that obviously you have to, that knowing what insomnia is leads you to a form of knowledge that is a sort of night knowledge, of dark knowledge. But let's not be too romantic about it, because it's, first of all, it's a health condition. It's a disease. And it's not taken seriously enough. Even now, I've been wandering from doctor to doctor for 20 years until finally finding a way to be able to live and not die with it. So it's a very serious condition, and I'm happy that I don't have to drive a school bus in the morning at 7 o'clock, because it's truly dangerous, especially if you take sleeping pills, which is a very bad idea. But of course I got hooked to them like any other insomniac. It's very hard to get rid of it. But even if you accept not to sleep, I very rarely drive. I drive only if I have to, and I know how to live with my insomnia because I'm not a surgeon. For example, there are pages in my book where I explain honestly that I was not a very good carer for my children. When you don't sleep, you get very irritable, very irritable. And you lose your patience very much earlier than the good sleepers. And so there is all this part in the book where I say that to give me the kick to be able to take care of them around 6 p.m. from just after school for the goûter, with bread and butter and jam and Nutella and everything. It was always joyful. But then after I had eaten with them, sugar, I so much wanted to take a little nap or just to do nothing, leave me alone. And I had 3 kids, and they were, at some point in my life, they were all babies at the same moment, And you have to put them in a bath and not drown them, and to be able to dress them, and to do the horrible homework for the ones who are having homework to do. And it was like a tunnel. So I drank red wine, and I understood so well the Desperate Housewives of the famous, TV show, because it gave me the kick to go on, And I had married a feminist, but I didn't know where he was. I'm still with him. He's a good guy, but he was just not there during the tunnel, and he was there in the weekends. Okay, but And I really have bad memories of this moment of my life because of insomnia. And now I sleep better, and my kids are almost all grown up. Maybe it has a relationship.
But this sort of lack of sleep, it was inhibiting you from escaping your life, in a sense, from escaping into yourself. You had no private space, no space that was your own. You were constantly present to the world, responsible to the world around you.
Every insomniac has his own metaphor, I think, his own reason for not sleeping. Sometimes you don't find it, but I was privileged enough to go from psychoanalyst to psychoanalyst and to just read and write all my life. And I understood that and also I was helped by a good psychiatrist, a specialist of insomnia. And all this made me understand that I was suffering from hypervigilance. It's a very common way of being an insomniac. It's you are the pilot, and if you fall asleep, the world is going to crawl down, and your kids are going to have horrible problems, and everything horrible you fear is going to happen. So it's a very high level of constant anxiety. You can live with it. Sometimes it's even funny in a way, but you get very superstitious. But I understood that I understood it when I realized also at the moment in my life I was taking a lot of planes, too many planes for my books, and each time the plane took off, I went to sleep very deeply, contrary to friends who were getting anxious, etc. Because the pilot was in charge, the real pilot, and I couldn't do anything to help the plane get, stay into the air. So it was the only moment that I let go. And at night, and also it's not it's not exactly a suspense novel, so I can tell you the plot. I fell insomniac when my first baby was born. It's normal not to sleep when you have a newborn. He or she doesn't sleep much, and vous l'accompagnez dans ce manque de sommeil. But quand ils ont fait leur nuit, how do you say that in English? Faire ses nuits. Kids, babies go through the night. When they went through the night, it's nice. I didn't. I'd stayed awake all the time, as if something terrible was going to happen if I lost vigilance. So that's very material. It's a routine insomnia that settles down in your life. So of course it's nice to make relationships with writing and with dangerous life and with dangerous literature. And it has relationships. But I don't want to be too romantic about it. They are relationships. And again, the writers I prefer are the ones that explore the margins of what is to be a human being on this planet, and are the ones that are in relationship whatsoever with the moon, with the magical thinking. Joan Didion, of course, was an insomniac, even before she lost her beloved ones. And they are the insomniac writers are the one. Very often they are not too much in storytelling, they are in the way they tell the story. They are more in language, not necessarily poets, but the way they tell their story is not, and that's literature I like. The literature that deals more with language than with stories, You can do both, of course, but that's the ambition we all have, perhaps. But insomnia is closer from the words than from the stories, I think.
And I want to stress, for those who haven't had the privilege of reading this incredible book, it's so citational. You're constantly in dialogue with authors from Ovid to Dante to Proust to Kafka, but also to your close personal friends, to your psychoanalysts. At one sort of very fun point, you're in dialogue with yourself. You cite your own work of fiction as a way of proving your own point, and so your capacity to sort of pull up from the well of literature to speak to insomnia is so striking. I want to touch upon a theme I'm picking up as you're speaking about your experience with insomnia, the fact that it started with the birth of your child, the fact that it was you you tried to treat it with alcohol, with other substances that you were taking. It seems like there's a relationship between insomnia and the weight of responsibility for you, that you can't sleep because you must stay awake. And so I want to talk about something that is so well articulated in this book, which is the relationship, sort of on a metaphorical but also a very real material level, between sleep and ethics, and the notion of the good and the bad conscience. So at the start of the book you say that we're suspicious of those who don't sleep because they have a bad conscience. They have something keeping them awake. There's someone who is comfortable with all the decisions they've made in life sleeps well, is the saying. And you dig into this more and more as we get into the book. You have this remarkable moment where you say about the ethics of sleep: does one have the right to stop being attentive? Does one have the right to seek rest? And why the night rather than the day, when the night is so dangerous for those who are the most vulnerable? And at this point you're speaking about those who are quite literally unhoused, who don't have a home to return to sleep safely. You also speak about Georges Perec and his writing, which is haunted by the Holocaust, and you say that following the Holocaust, through the voice of Perec, through his writing, sleep has been damaged. No one will ever sleep in the same way again after such harm to human relationships. How could we sleep? So can you speak to this notion of sleep as opposed to ethics and the ethics of insomnia?
Stefan Zweig, I think he's the first one who directly related war and sleeplessness as soon as the very first weeks of the First World War in 1914, perhaps in October, in my memory. He says, insomnia, l'insomnie a poussé partout. I'm badly quoting him, and he wrote in German, but l'insomnia, he says that insomnia is rising everywhere. So there is also in my little mind, I had at my modest level, and being lucky enough not to have directly witnessed a war, I had a 12 syllable verse in my mind, an alexandrin, spontaneous. I often write listening to voices in my mind, things that are not too conscious. I write by instinct a lot and by rhythm. And this sort of short poem in my mind said, l'insomnie augmente à mesure qu'on déboise. L'insomnie augmente à mesure qu'on déboise. It was something I always had in my mind. Walking or swimming or cooking.
Could you repeat the last words, on déboise?
L'insomnie augmente à mesure qu'on déboise means something like insomnia grows at the same rhythm as we cut the trees. Or insomnia spreads everywhere as we deforest. And in the beginning it was a strange thing, and then I realized it was true. I mean, it's true. Chile is burning right now. Next it will be what? Australia, California, Europe again, Portugal, Spain. So it's true, and it's a form of insomnia. It's not exactly eco-anxiety, or yes, perhaps it is. But I resist such names as eco-anxiety. They are not wide enough. They don't appeal enough to our hidden, archaic knowledge, something like that. So I need to find other words to have you hear something else, which also implies our relationship to wild animals and to clouds, to rain, to the water, to the way we are standing on this planet, to the relation we have with our hands, the fact, that once we were like this and then we liberated our hands and our brain and we painted on the walls of the caves, and all this, we come from there, and we come from the forest, we come from something very, very ancient, and all of us, and it has something to do with our sleep, and to what? I don't know. I wrote this book to know, in a way, because it's both a book about. I always write this way. It's a book about all these people like Prince or Michael Jackson or all this Heath Ledger, who played the Joker in one of the blockbusters, American blockbusters. They all tried to sleep. They were all awful, terrible insomniacs, and they made what I call sleep attempts. It's not suicidal attempts, it's sleep attempts, and they took too much fentanyl, sleeping pills. Heath Ledger is this young guy who played the Joker. He spent the last year of his life saying, "Damn it, I can't sleep." And he took at the end he took 9 sleeping pills, and I understand that. I know how you can reach that point, because you get crazy, because there is no interruption of your thinking. You think all the time. It has to stop, and it's a sleep attempt that fails into death. So it's both a book about that. It's very, very material, very, and it's a book about what will we do without the wild animals? What will we do without the wild forests? Will we be here or not? Sleep becomes a metaphor for a lot of things.
Well, I think it's such a testament to the success of this book that you're able to take Insomnia as your sort of theoretical starting point, and then from there you build this remarkable world in which you're interrogating our relationship to forests. You're interrogating the idea of the animals. You bring up the fact that animals sleep as well, that you see your dog Odette dreaming, and you know that she is participating in this sort of sphere of being that you are also participating in. And at the end it becomes a book about engagement and community, and that's why it's so citational, because you are engaging with the community of sleepers and not sleepers, but you're also calling upon us to engage with this world, to see everyone who's suffering, whether it's from insomnia, whether it's from war, whether it's an animal who's suffering from deforestation.
Yeah, you put it with your own words, and I agree. It is not only about suffering, I hope. It's also, I hope, it's a book about failure. I also quote often Beckett, rater mieux. It's a book, but Beckett for me is the Buster Keaton of literature. Beckett, Keaton, it's the same guy, and for me it's a book that's very haunted also by this figure of Buster Keaton failing all the time, falling all the time, more than Charlie Chaplin, in a different way, more mechanical perhaps. And each time I go to sleep, I know it's going to fail, and it's also very funny in a way, funny in a disastrous way, in a it will fail. So what else do than laugh, and so it's also the long story of my relationship with beds. Beds are my enemy. I mean, it's like a duel, Steven Spielberg filmed a duel with a little car and a truck, but it's a duel between me and my bed, Yeah, who is going to have who? I mean, so I tried all the beds. I sometimes I manage to sleep in a hotel room while I don't sleep at home, because I feel that I have been fast enough to leave my insomnia behind, So I remember one night in Arizona, of all places, in Tucson, I had flown 10 hours or 12, and I reached my bed. It was 1 p.m. in Arizona. I thought I'm going to take a nap, and I slept for 12 hours, which never happens to me, because insomnia was in the plane behind, rushing towards me, but she hadn't reached me. So you get completely crazy, But it's also a funny story, because again, in my life, it's not that bad. I mean, I don't sleep. Okay, let's write a book. It's not like my mother. My mother was also an insomniac, and she had to teach to young kids for every day at 8 o'clock. How do you do that at 8 p.m.? Yeah.
It's I love what you say about failure and about writing as a sort of project of inevitable failure, and so the joy in writing is living in that failure, sitting in it, and collecting other failures as well.
Yes, it's not that bad to fail when you write. Writing is about failure. It's about trying again, and until almost the beginning, the last pages, I didn't have a plan, So the plan truly came. Again, it's not an hallucination, but as an image, and I also tried to. It's ridiculous, but I also tried to starve in order to sleep. I was told that un jeûne. How do you say that?
Fast.
A fast, yes. A fast could give good results. So I went in a monastery in Provence, very nice place. Very expensive, not to eat for 8 days, you know. And
you paid not to eat.
Yes, of course. And
and
you hike all day. You hike, and I also, because the people were a bit weird, I also said that I was doing a silent cure, un vœu de silence. So I hiked in silence behind everybody, and I truly, the third day I fell in my bed of exhaustion. Yeah, and I slept. So it works. But in order to work, to work, that's a lapsus. In order to sleep, you have to do strange things. You know, you have to have a very exaggerated way of living. In fact, at some point in my life, all my day was organized for my sleeping. Sleep becomes a sort of myth, something you lost and that you want to find again. And it's a stupid life. It's
you say in the book that about this fast that you're embarking on, that you would spend your entire day preparing to sleep.
Exactly.
And then you wouldn't even sleep.
Yeah, it happened the third day.
I want to return to your diagnosis of hypervigilance, because I think that's key to understanding what the role of sleep in this book is, because as we are continually presented with this idea that to go to sleep is to sacrifice one's vigilance to the world, you sort of realize that life, the modern kind of globalized capitalist world that we live in, prevents sleep.
Sure.
If one is truly fully attentive to it, one cannot in good conscience go to bed. And you talk about this relationship. We have 5 minutes left, so I'm sorry, we're turning to capitalism. I can't hold myself back. You talk about this relationship between kind of capitalization, vigilance, productivity, and it's such an interesting way to consider both, as you're saying, the commodification of sleep through these ridiculous 8-day retreats in monasteries that cost an arm and a leg and don't even work, but then also the fact that, as you write, capitalism doesn't really allow for sleep. When you consider something like the invention of the 24-hour store, things have to be awake, the machine has to keep on running. You say capitalism permanently illuminates the night so that the conditions under which frenetic production take place are a new form of generalized insomnia, and that under capitalism, sleep is a structural attention deficit, a systemic anomaly in humans. And you draw a comparison between the sleep mode of machines and then the sleep mode of humans. So can you speak to this relationship between productivity as a philosophical concept kind of produced by capitalism and sleep as perhaps a form of resistance?
You may remember this kid who slept through Trump's speech to the nation. A young Joshua Trump was invited by Trump to attend this speech, and the kid went to sleep. And he became, for 1 minute, worldly famous because it was seen as an act of resistance, this nap. But we can... sleep becomes an act of resistance, it's true. But I'm not the first one to say that, of course, and there are wonderful books that I quote, like Jonathan Crary, Capitalism à l'assaut du sommeil. Anyway, it was written as soon as 2011, I think. So it was even before the realm of social media. So, and it goes worse and worse and worse. Of course, you have to react all the time. You have to be present on the social media. You have to be on a constant wake. It's for me, it was so obvious that it was. I tried to see very honestly how it affected me in my life, because I don't have much new things to say about that. I mean, it's very well documented what capitalism does to our sleep. So I that's how I started to think about the bedroom and this sort of shell we have around us that should protect us, but is completely porous to the world. Of course, the worst idea you can have at 4 a.m. when you don't sleep is to log on Instagram and even to see what time it is on your telephone. It's the beginning of de la fin.
The end.
Yeah. So we are very, very, very far from the Pascal room. You know, the famous saying of Pascal. Tout le malheur du monde vient que nous ne savons pas rester en paix dans notre chambre. All what's happening. Comment traduire ça?
All the evil in the world comes from the fact that we can't just keep to ourselves in our rooms.
Yes, exactly. But also we have been through COVID, and we know that we don't like to stay in our rooms. We hate that, and so the walls of our rooms are thinner and thinner today when we have a room. So at the same time, I was retranslating in French Virginia Woolf's A Room of One's Own. Quite interestingly, it's always been translated in France and in Latin countries by bedroom, la chambre, and not the room, la pièce, l'endroit, le lieu, which is, according to me, very sexist. A woman, a bedroom, it goes together. It's a Strauss-Kahn way of seeing women, les femmes de chambre. It's a very Latin way of seeing women in bedrooms. But anyway, so I was translating this room, and well, at some point, I don't know how to express myself orally and in English. I have to write, and there's a very big difference between writing and telling or saying, and I need to find, even including when I was reading, for example, Robert Urkish, History of the Night, a very good book about how the states were built on lighting the streets, and especially the corners of the street. In the Renaissance, the big cities like Venice, Florence, started to put lights at the corners of the street to say, the state is here, we are watching you, only the bakers have a right to work at night. And people who would not sleep and wander in the streets at night are suspicious. Women are prostitutes and men are burglars or thieves. So it started very early, this control of the night by the state. So even when I was reading very clever, intelligent books like this one, A History of the Night by Robert Urkish, I was trying to find my own way in my experience to express including what it is to be a woman in a public space at night, for example, and what is our relationship with a light at night when you are a woman or a man. It's not exactly the same, and all these strategies we have to walk at night, and so it again, it's a human experience on this planet and different from the countries where you live, and so it's a mess, this book.
It's not a mess. She's underselling it, I promise. And I think Marie, what's so remarkable about this book is that I perhaps even on accident stumble across so many just delicious points of tension, such as the idea of the night as this slippery, dark, dangerous place where boundaries slip away, but also sort of the meatiness of language, the ambivalence of language, that to stay awake, veiller, means also, surveiller. Mm-hmm. It's an expression of power. It's the expression of the power of the state over individuals, and yet it's also a way that individuals resist the state by staying awake. The ambivalence of the word that's become such a sort of a touch point for us in Anglophone culture, being woke. One has to be awake to things, be present to things, but at the same time, sleep is resistance. But at the same time, one has to remove the ego from sleep, but then the ego has to be present.
It's all deals with paradoxes, and paradoxes are deeply poetical and deeply awakening. When you think about a paradox, it leads you to places where you didn't go before in your mind. And at the same time, I was starting to write, because I always read and write many books at the same time. I was starting to write Fabriquer une femme, the one who's out in French at the moment. And Fabriquer une femme, only the last third of the book takes place in a nightclub, basically. And with the character of Solange, who is a nightclubber and who survives because of nightclubs, because she can find a place to be at night and to meet people and to become perhaps an actress, etc. So I also have sometimes when I'm so fed up of not sleeping, I just go out. I just go dancing. It's so much better than to be in your bed alone, miserable. Because I sleep alone, of course, because my husband is an insomniac. the feminist who was not there. He's an insomniac, so we can't share the same bed. It's impossible, because the worst you can do to an insomniac that's just gone to sleep is to wake him or her up. It's a divorce. You don't do that. so we, instead of divorcing, we very soon decided to not share the same bed, which is very interesting, because it's like it's one of the last taboos in France, especially, because when people come to our apartment and realize there are 2 bedrooms, you know, something is going wrong here, you know, and it's very interesting, the relationship to bedrooms and beds that people have, and how they see what should a couple be, and etc.
Well, it's another associate. I have to stop myself here because we have to turn the audience Q&A, but and this is something we didn't get to, but it's food for thought for all of you, another kind of cultural connotation of the night, of the bedroom, of sleep as sex as well, and the presence and the absence of sexuality in insomnia, because you're not sleeping, but you're not doing anything. You're not producing anything in the sense of capitalism, but also in the sense of reproduction.
Yes.
So again, I just want to stress to all of you the sort of richness of the subject of sleep as it pertains to all sorts of different kind of cultural
insomnia
images that we
is
hold.
alone. As soon as you are sharing your insomnia, it's not insomnia anymore. It's being with somebody, it's a dialogue, it's a sharing of misery, a sharing of ideas, but insomnia is a solitary experience.
Yes, but I would say this book is not solitary.
Yeah, because there is we are many. There's a big
and
community.
that's the paradox. Another paradox. We'll end it on that. Can we have a round of applause for Marie?
Merci.